Hi everybody, it's me, Patrick O.C., Artenish, as the Amazons say, spirits to you, and for those of you who know me previously, I'm Shrouded Sin. Tonight we're going to be talking about representation in media, why it's important, and why it's important to consider. And so, to make this a little bit clearer, I'm going to talk about three major things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that we still, as I mentioned previously, we still have a high amount of people who are white and who are male, cis male, in leaderships and also in the writing room. The problem with this, guys, is that when we have people that have only one general experience in this world, they may have some understanding. For example, I grew up across from a native reservation. Every day when I went from middle school to high school and beyond, I was constantly interacting with members of the Lummi Nation. This does not mean I have the experience of someone living on the reservation. I have friends who live on the reservation. In fact, I learned a lot about Native American life by talking to people and visiting and going over and just listening. But it still does not put my understanding on there. I will not, as the old saying goes, you don't really understand someone until you walk into their shoes. Well, I can't do that. So think about it when we have people in power who are writing these stories. Think about how we code, how we present things. The most egregious example of this is the Avatar, the last Airbender movie. Let's think about this. M. Night Shyamalan goes and through casting with Paramount and people, they specifically casted people who were Caucasian white for the positions of Katara, Aang, and Sokka. This was not the best they could get. There are plenty of young Asian actors they could have picked at the time, okay? They were consistent with casting the Fire Nation primarily as Indians. So, realistically, as they're presented, anyone who's Japanese or Thai would have done better because that's just how they dress. Their outfits are specifically, that's the group they pull from when it comes to inspiration. And yet, the Water Tribe, when first opened up, we see Asian faces. Then we see the one waterbending family, which is white. Then we run into the one airbender, who is white. Why are we coding? Why are we casting? Why are we coding the good people as white people, and why are we coding the bad people as people of color? Did no one think that would be a problem and how that would send a message? Race bending, which is what they do here, is a form of whitewashing. It's when you remove and you basically, I mean, look at what they did with the Exodus movie. We had something set in ancient Egypt, yet the person who played the Queen of Egypt was Sigourney Weaver. I don't know if you guys have actually ever seen a picture of an Egyptian or seen anyone from Egypt, but people from the region don't look like that, okay? And darkening brown skin doesn't really help the situation. We've had showrunners often say they did this because they want to make money, it's to save money. I often hear people tell me, well, they did this, it's because that's the best actor. A lot of cases, the truth of the matter is that's not really why. If we really think about it, I could say in some parts perhaps, but also we still have a low amount of people of color and women getting positions as directors and showrunners and at the top as producers, okay? I'm not going to pull out all the stats. We already covered a lot of that. I believe it was close to 70% are still primarily white men, upper class. I'm emphasizing upper class because these guys, even if they were lower class, they make a decent amount of money. They definitely don't necessarily have, they definitely are affluent now. So let's just go from there. These guys do not have the experiences. They would not have, what's really sad is M. Night Shyamalan, a person of color, allowed for the casting, or it was thrust upon him. I'm actually quite curious why he went in that direction. Even to this day, he argues that it was a good idea. I still don't understand. But I think we can all agree that the Avatar Last Airbender movie was just plain awful. Not only in the acting, but also in a lot of the effects and everything else. But the casting in general shows you that when you present this to people, it sends a message. Now think about when you watch a story and you connect to a character and that character dies. How many people got angry at the Red Wedding for Game of Thrones? You felt a connection to the North and the pains of the Starks. And when they died, you were angry. Now think about it. We're going back to the spoiler territory, people here. When Lexa dies in the 100, many young bisexual women and older bisexual women and lesbians were pissed off. They're like, why is our ship dead? They're pissed off because the one main connection, the one acknowledged queer character outside of a guy, is dead. And she was killed to further the plot of a straight character. At the end of and the one who has often characterized as being in more pain, we got more pain about Jasper's girlfriend dying than the loss of Lexa. And near the entire time, Jasper is sitting there complaining about how Clark is an angel of death. Now, I understand that the guy's going through PTSD, but the fact that the writers thought this was a good idea to thrust upon the pain of the men onto the women and then continue to use their loved ones as a means of... It just really shows that there's a difference between showing a good connection to relationships. I would say, I think Outlander did a good job with this, especially this last season, but I just want to say this, guys. When people react in such a way, and your immediate reaction is to say, no, it's not this trope, and you don't have that experience, that really probably means that perhaps you should have gone out of your way to have more thoughts on what you were doing. Okay? Maybe, when I've written my current book, I've handed off to people in God, is there anything problematic there? For the love of God, I'm trying my best to write stories here. The point of the matter is that this stuff has an impact. It does send a message. And if you want to make people think, sometimes you do want to take that extra time to consider that perhaps if you are from a certain background, if you are affluent and you are black, maybe if you're writing a story about young immigrant people from China, consider what you're presenting. Are you relying too much on painful tropes of the magical East? Are you painting all the Asian women as submissive? Think about this. There is a problem because we are consistently bombarded with these stories, with the sassy black woman, with the exotic woman from, Latina, to the dancing guy, to the over-the-top gay man, to the butch lesbian, that oftentimes we do rely on this. How many times have you written a story and handed your friend a sassy gay best friend? I've done this. I've had to stop it because I was like, holy shit, this is not a thing. It's not a good thing. So, this is why, again, representation matters, because it allows you to go, oh shit, I'm committing a bad trope. I'm being a lazy writer. It gives you a second to go, maybe I should really flesh out this character, because oftentimes we're not doing a lot of thought onto who these characters are. Okay? So that is the big problem. A lot of the times we see a lack of representation because right now the glass ceiling still hasn't been shattered, and there needs to definitely be a lot more diversity so that stories can properly get told in a manner that is respective to the voices that are trying to tell them. Now let's talk about why this matters to people who don't always get those stories told. When I was growing up, I was the kid that was constantly taunted, right? But I could jump into stories like Lord of the Rings and feel like one of the hobbits, or Aragorn, son of Arathorn. I could feel empowered by those stories. I have plenty of friends who love Tolkien, and they're empowered by the story of Eowyn. But that's the only real strong female character remotely presented in Lord of the Rings. I can make an argument for Arwen, but she doesn't really have a point of view. Now, how many people now read Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, and connect with Arya, connect with Sansa, feel a connection with Arya and Martell of Dorne. We are feeling a greater connection. One reason why many people were mad when Dorne was first presented in Game of Thrones is because the Dornish specifically are described as dark-skinned, olive, and darker, right? So a lot of people are like, yeah, Game of Thrones is gonna finally have some people that aren't creepy pirates always talking about capturing the black women. Yay for racist tropes, Game of Thrones. The first time we see them, we get a guy who's kind of a over-the-top bisexual, which is, it's not bad, but remember when I talked about the whole presenting bisexuals as promiscuous? That's often still how they're coded. I mean, I see people on Tumblr going, well, if you date a straight guy, it's not really you're not really bisexual. It's like, yeah. And just because I eat avocados means I love guacamole. No, it doesn't. It just means I like the taste of avocado, you idiot. Just because I haven't eaten an orange in a while doesn't mean I don't like oranges. So, this was mattered because we had people of color being presented as powerful, as being feared, as being the last kingdom to join the Seven Kingdoms. And the first time we see the major faces, it's not seeing Oberyn. It's seeing a bunch of primarily light-skinned guys dressed up in Arab outfits. Now, the argument could be made that these are people of Andal descent, most likely going to look Anglo-Saxon, but we already know that the Dornish live in a desert realm, so they're not going to necessarily look, Mediterranean tan. They're going to look northern, Arabic. They're going to look like they're from Saudi Arabia. So the fact that that was a casting decision just kind of makes me go, eh? And so that. And then the first time we meet one of the Sand Snakes, we are often introduced how they dress kind of skimpily, and there's a focus on their sexuality. There's nothing bad with that. But again, it presents the idea of the foreign, exotic woman who uses her sexual wiles. Now, the Dornish are often painted that way in the books, but at the same time, they're also painted as being descended from a line of powerful queens. They have equal inheritance, and that was removed from the storyline until what happened this last season, okay? So, this is why representation matters, because when you have this sort of idea of presenting mass media, you're telling people what society is okay with. I mean, think about this. Mass media includes body shaming. I mean, how many of you guys are going to sit there and tell me that you think it's okay to tell someone that you only can be thin and you're only attractive if you're a thin girl or a muscular guy, or you can't be non-binary. A bunch of you are going, okay, I'm starting to understand. That matters, okay? You guys, let's admit, we already complain about body shape. We already talk about, let's not put people down for how they look, okay? So think about that a step further and go, what about people of different ethnic, gender identities and expressions, ethnic identities, religious identities, and further, okay? I'm going to bring up an example here that's very specific, but I think it's a good one. Gap has been called out. There's a article in The Guardian. I'll link it in the comments. And what happened effectively is they had an advertisement for little boys and little girls. The one for little girls said, be a social butterfly. All right? The one for little boys said, be a scholar. Now, I want you guys to take a second here and think about why is this a problem. First, it says to boys, and again, the ad, when you see it, it's in light pastel colors for the girl and a bluish color for the boy. It says, boys can be smart and boys can be scientists. And this is a problem right now because we still have a low amount of women in coding, in the tech industry, and in sciences, okay? Those areas have a lack of women. And we're telling them that they can be social butterflies. Okay? Do you see this, all right? And this is alongside the fact that video games are still using the TNA to sell them, okay? I mean, out of all the movies I've seen this year, Deadpool had the least amount of girls being used sexually, and we saw way more of Ryan Reynolds behind. And, I was actually happy. So, this is why it was important that when Ghostbusters came out, we actually had women being presented as smart, as being scientists. The only problem with this movie is that the black woman was the street smart, not scientist, and she was often shown as being strong. But I have to say, Leslie Jones is just a badass comedian, and she seems to be pretty happy with it, so that is the only problem I had. Throughout the entire movie, the girls are shown as arguing against this, saying, and they're the ones who actually said, instead of trying to destroy the world, maybe we should, work together. Kind of like in the last one, let's not destroy the world. Let's work together. And during the premiere, they had a bunch of little girls dressed up as Ghostbusters in the jumpsuits with the proton packs. This tells girls that, yes, you can be a hero. I mean, guys, we have Batman. We have Superman. I mean, I'm non-binary, but I'm going to be honest here. We have plenty of strong male role models, okay? For the love of God, we have Channing Tatum. We have The Rock. And no, Samuel L. Jackson does not count as the cover-all for people of color. I mean, let's be honest here, guys. We need more black superheroes. We need more Latinx superheroes. We just need more people that don't look like me being superheroes, okay? Because, as I mentioned, it makes kids feel like they can do something. It gives them a boost of power. How many of you have played a video game and when you won, you're like, yeah, I kicked that guy's butt. The same feeling of when you watch your favorite team win the Super Bowl or win the Stanley Cup or, the World Cup. I mean, how many people were just like, awesome. How awesome was it when the USA's team won and they were put on FIFA? And then we found out this year that they actually got paid less than men. So representation matters because it makes people feel positive. It makes them feel like they can be accepted. And honestly, I prefer living in a society that's all about positivity, that makes people think they can actually do things. Because honestly, I really don't like dealing with people that are constantly, depressed and not feeling good. And especially ones that feel the need to attack and just, destroy other people's positivity. I would rather be about let's make everybody happy, let's be proficient. And I think by expanding the list of voices that we're just going to make storytelling better. I mean, one of the best stories I've been reading is The Expanse. And part of the great thing of The Expanse is that humanity goes out into space, race stops being about your skin color, and it all comes based upon where you live. And it really shows you that, yes, humanity is horrible, but at the same time, we're best when we work together, right? I mean, how many people here love playing games with their friends? I mean, we can all agree that you have fun when you're working together. So now think about if you got to see more stories from other points of view that didn't always paint black people as gangsters, all right? Or painted Latinos as either gangsters or immigrants, or Asian women as submissive, or lesbians as being killed, or always being butchy or overly femme. How about instead of relying upon tropes, we tell stories about actual people? I mean, Steven Universe has been doing this, and it's got a massive fandom, and it's doing things and telling stories that I look at adult TV and I go, this show just told a story about a war veteran and actually did it really bloody well. This show also did a story that is incredibly gray and morally makes me go, to hell. And at the same time, I feel less rubbing my head about the story decision than when I watched Orange is the New Black in the last season. If a cartoon can tell a story on this level and not demean people down the stereotypes, then we can do it for serials. I believe we can do it, and we can do it in publishing. One of the greatest things about one of my favorite writers, Ursula Guin, is when she wrote her stories, she did it to the point of that, one, no one was exactly good. Most of the story was told from the point of view of Ged, Sparrowhawk. And he comes from a place called the Archipelago. Everybody in the Archipelago are pretty much, Mediterranean, dark-skinned individuals, okay? These guys are colored as people of color. They come from the center of, their form of civilization. And they're often invaded by people called the Kargads. The Kargads are effectively a light-skinned religious zealot group. Now, generally, when we create stories, we code people from the East or people who are darker skinned as the religious fanatics. Now, there is also propensity to code the Christian individual, the pseudo-Christian religions as religious fanatics, but perhaps we should just stop coding everybody specific as a religious fanatic. The point I'm trying to make here is that she was willing to tell a story that said, hey, look, I'm not going to make this strictly from, this is a fantasy world, so nothing says it has to be in mythical England, right? And nothing says that mythical England has to be mythical white England. It could be, elves with dark skin living in a jungle, or white-haired, blue-skinned, chist-like guys living on the tundra. I mean, it's a fantasy realm, okay? If you're setting something in the real world, create people. But if you're doing something in fantasy, something also doesn't say you have to consistently repeat the same tropes. Sometimes the cool thing about representation is it allows you to think outside the box, to learn about other cultures, go out and do this research, learn about different points of view, and better yourself along the way, and then also write good stories. So let's just quickly round up since we're about 20 minutes in, and I don't like making these videos too long. Representation allows people to think more about what they can be. When people are allowed to feel empowered, they are positive, they feel better about themselves. I mean, people, if you feel happy, you sleep better. You're less likely to have problems with being sick. People who are happy are more productive in general. Need I say more? They're more likely to do things. So I don't see the drawback, honestly, to representation. I don't see the drawback to increasing the kinds of stories we tell, or perhaps taking a step back and going, I'm not going to code all these individuals to the stereotypes that I've been bombarded with in the media. And I also think it's important that if you are not from a certain group, if I'm going to write a story about a black family, I'm going to find one of my friends who is black, and I'm going to pass it on them and go and say, okay, did I do anything stupid? Because I don't have this experience. I wrote about Native Americans, and I still ask my Native American friends to read it. Because you know how easy it is for me not to understand crap? Because, again, I didn't walk in those shoes. So, if we can do this for me, I know plenty of you guys do this thing, then I'm pretty sure mass media can. All we have to do is start asking them to do it, and we need to start not going and seeing movies like, Egypt, Gods of that horrible movie, or seeing Exodus, or giving any attention to the horrible Avatar movie, okay? I think we can all agree to that. Plus, at the end of the day, it's about creating positive role models that make children say, that's me, that's my face, I can be that guy. That's why it matters, guys. I know, once again, I rambled. Have a good day, a good weekend. As the Amazons say, Fahan Shush, spirits to you.